Hello, everybody. It's Graham Cofe with another My Music. Now, this is much later than I would normally be, but I've made a special occasion because I'm going to be speaking to Rachel all the way from America. But first, we're going to watch the Analog Trash video, which is down here to my right, and it will be in front of you shortly. Please do enjoy it. And afterwards, go and visit the wonderful people at Analog Trash via their website. If you feel like you might want to part with a few pennies, do that as well.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Rachel, so nice to see you.
Likewise.
If I sound a little bit quieter than I normally am, that's because the high production value of this My Music means that I'm literally next to my ADHD son in another bedroom, who hopefully will stay asleep and not come in crying. But yeah,
What time is it there?
it's now 22:10.
Okay. And your son, how old's your son?
My son is 7 years old.
Okay.
Yes, having already been excluded from school once at the tender age of 6. But there we go. We were such is life.
I'm hiding in my daughter's room. She's out of town and there's people here. So I'm like, this is going to be the only way that I can get some privacy right now.
Okay, so we're all hush whispers, and everyone you have to gather in and listen really carefully so that that you can hear us. Rachel, it's lovely to meet you, as I said, and we just had a little video from Analog Trash, and that's actually one of the places that I first discovered you because you had a nice little write-up recently on Analog Trash.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually didn't realize until you posted that you were connected, because I just finished a segment that I sent to them about Past Go, like a breakdown of it, and that was really fun. And so I literally just sent that to them this morning. So
yeah, I also caught on your social media. I loved your social media reel that you did the other day, where you said, "I don't know how to do this. I'm an artist, not a content creator."
it's so weird to know how you're being perceived. Like I never
How?
know. Like I will like analyze my own post and be like, who is that person? Like,
Yeah.
is that authentic? You know what I mean? It's just, and everybody's got an opinion, and it's just yeah. Do what I try.
Yeah. How do you honestly feel about the whole kind of social media thing?
Like everybody else honestly feels about it when they get down to a person to person or group conversation. I mean, I don't know any artists that like it. I think that it's a promotional tool. It's impersonal. It's really good for connecting though to other artists. Like I will say that I've met a lot of people that way. I'm about to have I did a shoot with Weirdo Music Forever, and like pretty sure that was like a social media connection. Obviously, I find other artists to play with and stuff, but yeah, I don't really like what it's doing to like music and artists. Just like this like vastless sea of content.
Yeah, I mean, you do quite well on social media. So here's the irony, or do you see the irony in the fact that actually you on the one hand kind of mock it and find it quite disdainful, but on the other hand, you're doing quite well on it. I mean, it's a weird kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm in LA, and so it's a very showy kind of town, obviously, and I take a lot of like advice from industry people, and maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should say fuck them and just do whatever I want. But it's like, oh, well, this is what works. And like, I guess I see the irony. I mean, what is considered good on social media? I mean, it's not as if it's like monetizing per se. It's not as if I have like 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of followers or something like that. And it's funny because I'm just like looking through artists to play with me. I'm performing it on August 16th at the Resident, which is in the Arts District over here. And I'm looking for other women artists. And like I found this one artist who just had like 200,000 followers.
Wow. Yeah.
And then like I went on her, not to like bag on another artist because I would never do that, but like just like a very low amount of listeners on Spotify, which monthly listeners, that's another metric I can't stand. But and then like I just noticed like a lot of like fake comments. And so it's just like, it's hard to gauge like anyway what's real and what's not. There's so much smoke and mirrors. People don't realize how much smoke and mirrors there are like in music. So I guess there's like a lot of like,
yeah,
I don't know how engaged, like I'm very bad at the whole fake it till you make it thing, which is a huge part of music. I feel that I'm more like authentic as a person. So it's very hard for me to like be like, oh yeah, like I'm like doing so well, like things are great. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm growing and I have fans. It's hard for me to not have imposter syndrome, which I actually have a song about that called The Fraud. And I just it's like, and I've heard bigger artists than me say this, it's like I compare myself to who's doing better than me. And I'm like, well, why don't I have those amount of monthly listeners or that like Spotify editorial playlist or like just
whereas actually musicians or artists should really go back to comparing themselves to who's writing better music than me. Right?
I would love it to be like that. It feels like that's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess I felt like
this mad, crazy world in which we live in.
Yeah, I felt pretty confident about my music, and I feel like I'll be able to find an audience, and I feel like because I like this music and I think that it's good music, I think that I'll be able to find, like it'll get, people will hear it, and people and one of the things is like people still want to hear great music. Like at the end of the day, you can have a perfectly crafted image, and maybe your music will even do well. But like, I want great music. Like I'm always trying to find great music, and when I find something great, I really latch onto it.
Yeah. And you are making great music. And you're also making great art, and you're making things which you can tell because of the sound of what you're making isn't following a formula, because you don't stick to a formula that because you want to experiment, don't you? You want to push yourself in terms of how far you can go, and that means that's not going to necessarily fill the algorithm every time. Thank
you so much. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other irony. Well, is it an irony? I run a social media marketing business, but the reason that I came out of what I did or was doing to start this was because actually I just feel that you've got to have some people out there that are trying to push against the way that it's being done. And my focus with my clients that I work with is to do a lot of this, because you talk about the kind of authentic part. This stuff like Chat GPT and AI and a robot can produce a picture and a robot can write it and create this and create that scares the out of people. Doesn't scare me, but what it does is it makes me feel a bit sad that we kind of lose that kind of creativity as people. So I'm trying to get people back to talking, because to me, it's the one thing, what we're doing now, is the one sanctity, if you like, that we have left. You know, maybe if we keep talking, we can at least find some truths, and maybe get people back to realizing like what's actually important. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but what do you think in terms of communication? How vital is it that you have that kind of communication with your audience?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly enjoy this. I like personally connecting with people. You know, I haven't played it, like, for example, obviously playing live is the best, and I haven't done that for a while. And whenever I've played live now with my solo performances, since I've been a solo artist and not in a band, I like literally book the show and then I get the band together, because I'm like, I'm not going to do this unless I book a show. Like, but anyway, I that feeling that you can get with people just unmatched. And, you know, some of my favorite artists, obviously, I love hearing their interviews and I love finding their interviews. And yeah, then it creates a true personal connection to the artist. You know, I can only really look at it from a perspective of how do I feel when I see an artist I love in an interview, you know?
Yeah.
And
what is it that you look for in an artist yourself when you're as a listener? What is it that, you know, draws you to another artist?
I mean, authenticity, originality, soul. I love all types of music. It's very vast what I listen to. I listen to a lot of women artists these days. That's not, some of my favorite artists are men, so that's not any particular reason. But I do think there's like a lot of stuff that sounds sort of the same and like sort of, you know, I want to find something different and great. Like,
Yeah.
I want something to be like, ooh, what's that? I want to be able to listen. I do want to be able to listen to like 15 to 30 seconds and be like drawn in, you know? Yeah.
The other thing is for me is that you've got this voice that's there range wise. You're not, you know, there's so many young female artists where the voice is quite weak and it's up there. You know what I mean?
Like a soprano, or
it's
like,
but it's quite thin as well at the top. Yeah, you've got a strong voice that's kind of in the middle of all of that. Yeah,
yeah.
And I like that, because I like people like, you know, and I will get her on this show sometime, because she's told me she will, even though her management has told me they won't. Sorry, management, but she will. Jonas Policewoman.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
I haven't heard of her. I'll have to check her out.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I think you'd like her, because she experiments with what she does, but you know, she's got that strong voice, which sits in that middle ground. So
yeah, I mean, it's just, there's definitely certain voices that can just grab you. They, you know, definitely the vocal can do a lot as far as how, like, I was just hearing, like, somebody sent me like a song the other day, and it was like really good, like kind of like modern metal, like really crunchy, like, but like clean,
yeah,
aggressive guitars, electric guitars. And I was like, this is so fucking good. And then the singer came on. I'm like, damn. I was hoping like maybe I could sing. Can I like, but yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I there is a lot I mean, obviously I like the music. The music is really important too. But the vote, but like honestly, there is some music that I love that the singer is just not, it's not like the singer's anything, spectacular vocally wise. It just might be the melody or the way it sounds with the music. So it's like it's not, I don't think it's something that I can just pinpoint. I
No.
tend to think I have excellent taste in music. I like have like this dream to be A&R. I totally have like an A&R fantasy, even though A&R is not what it used to be. But like I do like feel like there's been a good amount of artists that I found them when they were small and I've watched them like a meteoric rise and I've been like, called it. Like I fucking knew it.
Your own music and the imagery that you put with that music. There's an element in which, I mean, because your music on the one hand is very modern in terms of sound, but there's an element in terms of some of the imagery and the art and the sort of art reference, etc., which looks back. Where does that come from? Are you?
Well, I love the I mean, I love the 90s and I love the 80s. So I
Yeah.
definitely feel like my music is 90s and 80s and maybe even early 2000s influenced. But yeah, I mean, I there are some modern things that I like. So I try and like, I feel like maybe I try and like incorporate that. But
What
my
was it about? What was it about those times? What was it about what was going on in those times that
I mean, maybe
really?
it's just my where I was in my life, influential, ages in my life, in the 90s, certainly. I mean, I was a child, but like, uh, the the music was so good
It's
back then.
exciting, wasn't it? It
Yeah.
changed. I think part of it was it changed so quickly, so rapidly, didn't it? You know,
Yeah. I mean, I
I
will say that I think that while I think the newer like Gen Z and stuff, like the music that they're coming out with, while I think that it's kids don't like the younger, like they don't have the attention span, like they listen to something and they're like on to the next. I do think they're coming up with stuff that's like original and like more underground and weird, and they're not like obsessed with like the image and the fucking sheen image and like the followers, and like they just don't care. I mean, it's really interesting to see, like I've found some artists that I like obviously look them up and they'll have like just huge numbers on Spotify and like really no presence at all on Instagram or TikTok or anything. They might not even have a TikTok. Um, yeah, I mean, I would love for that stuff to go away. I don't know that it ever will, but I would love for it to go away and music to have just, I don't know. I just think between like lockdown and social media, it's really hard to get people to have the energy to just, kind of break free unless, or where you're in England? Are you in London?
yeah. Well, not in London. No, I'm in the West Country.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, places like, I guess, London and New York and stuff, you're surrounded by people all the time the second you walk out the door. So I don't know how much that, but yeah, it's hard to know what the goal is anymore as a musical artist, other than like, oh, like what else am I gonna do?
Absolutely. If you could take someone from that sort of 80s 90 period and someone from today to put together as a little super band with you, who would you pick?
Hmm. Someone from the 90s and God, that's a really hard thing to say. Because I also have like, I'm like ADHD and I have like a really short attention span and terrible memory. But like I can tell you like what I love right now. Like I love Rico Nasty. There's an artist called Jen and the Degenerates that I might be collaborating with, which would be awesome.
Cool.
They're obviously like more indie. But Yeah, like, I don't know, like, I think, like, it'd be cool to have, like, Rico Nasty with, like, some of the '90s, like, sort of grunge bands. I can't
Not
really think of, like, one in particular, maybe, like, Hole would be cool.
Hole or
It'd
the
be cool if she's
Smashing Pumpkins or someone
yeah,
like
like,
that.
she's super aggressive, so it'd be fun to hear her in that realm. She's got a real, like, genre mixing sort of thing happening.
Yeah, or someone like L7 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. I mean, I also, like, like, I love Madonna and Michael Jackson. It's not like, those are huge influences for me too. All the pop, like, all the pop back then. So that's, like, my thing is I love pop, so, um, but I also love alternative. So I feel like, for to be, like, sort of pop alternative, like, it just makes the most sense for me genre-wise.
Mm.
So but, like, yeah, I don't know, there's not I'm, like, trying to think of, like, any, like, modern pop. You know what? I'm not gonna lie, I really love I've never listened to Harry Styles, no offense. Never really drawn, I've heard bits and pieces, I'm like, Watermelon Sugar, this is not for me." But I do really like As It Was. I think As It Was is a great song. I
It
love
is a
that
great song.
I
Yeah,
love that song. Like, I could just, like yeah, that song is, like, sheer just ear candy, just enjoyable from beginning to end. It's, like, all chorus. Songwriters could learn a thing or two about the way that song's crafted.
that
Including
that whole
myself.
that whole album's pretty good.
Really? Okay, well, I'll have to listen to the whole thing then, because
Harry's
I
House is
really
a
am not a fan of Watermelon Sugar. I don't think he's gonna hear this or care, or sorry to any Harry Styles fans, but yeah, As It Was is a great song.
yeah, yeah. No, that whole album, I think, is a good pop album. You know, and I think it's got enough kind of references to the past. There you are. We don't need to dwell on Harry
I
Styles
know.
for too long. I mean, he does
It
what he
reminds me of
does.
yeah. It reminds me of, like, Boys of Summer, like, it has that kind of feel,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like,
Don
"Wow,
Henley.
this is bringing me back to that,"
And
which
you've got that in some of your songs as well. You've got that, you know, guitar line subtly driving it underneath
I do I love electric guitars so much, and I
mm,
I love electric guitars and synths. I really love Tame Impala. I mean, that's a modern band that, like, I've loved, like, Currents is just, like, obviously an amazing album, and I was definitely influenced by that album.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have some artists that I, like, become obsessed with, like Fiona Apple, and she's, like, the love of my life.
She's a great artist. Great
I'm
artist.
I she's just and talk about great interviews.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really all the interviews that I've read of hers are written, and they're just incredible. Especially for Fetch the Bolt Cutters, the interviews were all incredible that she did.
Is it quite outside of the music? Is it quite important to you that uh, musicians or your artists are quite cerebral? That they've got a brain? That they've got something to say?
That's a good question. I was just talking to a friend yesterday who's also a musician, because he loves the 1975, which I've never really even listened to, and I'm happy that I haven't. And he's just like, I don't know. He just doesn't even want to know about, like, what's going on with the singer and this and that and why it matters, why he can't just enjoy it. And I'm like, the thing is that he's in a leadership role. He's in a role that he is a role that has power and influence. So if he's saying and doing certain things that are hateful, bigoted, then, young minds hear that and it
Or
has
just meaningless, maybe even.
meanness,
No, or just meaningless.
meaningless.
Yeah,
Right.
it doesn't even necessarily have to be a negative thing, does it? I mean, look, pop can just be pop, right? And it can just be something that just is music and just to be enjoyed. But I don't know. I'm kind of attracted to people that have actually got something to say as well.
Yeah, so what this is where I was getting at with that. So I'm going to make this short. So anyway, so he was saying like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, this is the problem, is that he has this power and influence. And Rina Sawaya, who I'm not really familiar with her music, at Glastonbury just called him out on stage, like in an awesome, creative, powerful way. And I was like, that made me want to check out her music. I was like, good. I'm like, I'm glad somebody's saying something, because it seems like this is just, no one even gives a shit and it's fine. And he's had no cancel culture or anything like that. But like, the other voice needs to be there, and the other voice needs to be in some ways louder, because it's always the quieter voice. It's the hateful voices that are the louder voices, almost always, it seems,
Yeah.
at least. And so if you don't have those other voices, then we will get overtaken by hateful voices. And people can sort of look at that as a nebulous thing or whatever, but like, I've experienced it, with my daughter at school with anti-Semitism that she's dealt with. It's like ridiculous in Los Angeles, outer, but still, like, it does affect, like, it does have an effect. So I don't care if he's like not, of the president or something. Like, he still has influence. He still has, millions of fans maybe or whatever. So it's hard to know. I'm very sensitive. So if people are like, nobody gives a shit about your opinion, like, I'm like, oh, maybe like nobody gives a shit about my opinion. But like, I definitely, like, there's certain issues that I will always support. And if I feel the need to, I do feel like when you're an artist, or when you're in this role where you have an audience, then you have an opportunity. And maybe, you can do something separate with philanthropy or volunteering or things like that. But, like, I'm like, if there's like some sort of issue that I feel strongly about, like, I doubt I won't say anything. Like, I'm not really the kind of person that like just doesn't say anything.
It's quite, maybe not the best person to have ever said it, but he did say it, and actually it was quite profound. Probably the only profound thing he'd ever said. But Gene Simmons from Kiss.
Okay.
Actually, in the documentary one time, was talking about being a rock star, right? And he actually said the world's full of rock stars, and actually a lot of them don't play music. A lot of them aren't rock stars in the same way that I am, but they are people that have a rock star attitude. And he went on to say what he meant by that is that they are people that feel that they have got something to say into the world, and something to do. And I thought actually that's actually really quite profound. And in a way, that's why maybe you feel that way, and maybe I feel that way as well, which is that if your pop stars, rock stars, or whatever are empty in some way as a vessel, and they're not really saying anything, then, do you really want to be interested in that? Because that's not really an inspiration for anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that people get, with all the scrolling and, all the options out there, they still want the truth. They want authenticity. They want to hear somebody say, oh, like, that's not like your boring run-of-the-mill thing to say. Like, let's hear what this, what's going on here. I love Madonna. I mean, she's a perfect example of somebody who's always said lots of things and stuck by causes she believed in. And no matter how much people trash talk her, she will rail against it. She doesn't care. And I have so much respect for her. I feel like she's dealt with unbelievable sexism, ageism. I don't care that she's like sexual. I don't care that she's had so much plastic surgery. Like, I couldn't give a shit. I love her. I will always love her. But yeah, I mean, Fiona Apple's another example of that. I mean, she's doing court watching now. Like, she doesn't have any social media, but if you go on there, if you go on her fan account, that's what she's doing. She's always trying to get people to sign petitions, call Congress members. She's like, yeah, fuck the music. I'm doing this now. So that honesty is just people want it. I mean, I just do think people want it at the end of the day, and it's hard in this the way things are now. Obviously, those are really big artists, so it's sort of easier for them, I would imagine. But yeah,
I like that. I called my social media. So you know, I called my social media business a better way of life. And one of the things that I talk to clients about is that there's everybody out there is just trying to fill the world with content. Everybody is. There's this hole that slips by as the day goes past, where you see these kind of blank slots and you think, I've got to fill it. I've got to put something up there because time's just going to go. And what we're all in a race to do is just fill the gap with something, right? And I say to people, no, stop. Don't fill it with something. Don't focus on the content. Focus on your activity. What are you doing in the world? Go out and do that. There's your content. And because once you go out there and do it, then you'll make big news. You make something really happen that's actually worth people knowing about. Yeah. And I think artists have that kind of responsibility as well, you know. And maybe one of the reasons you and I probably like that 80s, 90s time as well is it naive, maybe, in a way, or it was a naive time in as much as we perhaps believed a little bit more because we didn't have the internet, etc., that we could change the world. Right? And then as the world got smaller, we realized actually that's a lot harder than we thought it was. But there seemed to be a lot more people thinking that through things like music, we could change the world. I mean, let's face it, Live Aid happened. It happened at that time, right? We actually believed that this was actually doing something, you know. We believed that when Jim Kerr and Peter Gabriel got up on stage and sang Biko to free Nelson Mandela, we believed we were getting Nelson Mandela out of there. Right? It doesn't, that kind of belief that music is a power for good kind of got diminished a little bit, hasn't it, by sort of saturation of the airwaves. So, you know, it's nice when you get, as you say, people like Fiona Apple, it's nice when you get musicians that are like trying to take that back and go, you know, I've got a voice, I'm going to do something with it, you know, and then that seeps through to your art as well, because you're going to want to say something about it in what you're putting out there as well. I mean,
well, I respect you saying all this to me, because I never know really how it's being perceived. And like likes and comments are not really how I can know if it's how my presence is like being perceived.
What does that measure? Doesn't measure anything, does it?
I know. So it's like hearing you say that, I'm like, okay. Like, as far as my commentary on social media while I'm doing that, and the irony, it's like, well, if we can't talk shit about social media on social media, then where are we going to be able to talk shit about it at? Like, you could start movements on social media. We could start like, let's turn this shit off, you know, movement.
Yeah. And the real artists of yesterday did it on TV, didn't they? Do you remember that really? I don't know whether you remember it, but I think it was like the first time David Bowie was on TV as a young boy. he was in a group of boys at school who all had really long hair, and they, they were brought on TV for like an interview about the fact that they were all kind of dressing with quite an androgynous look and long hair and whatever. And he was like, I'm going to use this opportunity to say, well, what a stupid question. Why are you asking these questions? Why are you, you know, sort of actually putting down the media that was giving him media?
Right.
Brilliant,
Right.
brilliant, you know? And that's part of what artists have always traditionally done and have always had a part in doing, in a way, which is actually to look at the mechanism that might give them a voice, but also criticize the mechanism that gives them a voice whilst they're using it. So that actually...
I appreciate that. Because I'll like delete mean comments. Like if there's like mean comments and shit on my shit, I'll just be like, I have the power to delete you and block you and bye. Right.
Yeah.
So there was definitely like trash talking to me along. Oh, so you're like talking shit about something while you're like getting something from it. Some of them I like, you know, just reply to, but some of them are just like nasty, and they're from these like accounts that are like basically fake accounts. So yeah, I'm like, no, I'm gonna have what I want on here to be said. Like, you're not gonna get to have your voice here. Go do that somewhere else, kind of thing. So I really appreciate that, because my intention is not to be like have a certain thing. Like, I really am. That is how I feel, which is bullshit. Like, so the song, like the little thing that I put up about the blue check mark, which got a lot of shit, it seemed to be sort of like I was never going to put that on, but I was going through my voice notes trying to find songs that I could write, because I'm trying to do collaborations right now. And I was with my partner and I played that and I was like, oh, I forgot about this. And he's like, oh, I dare you to put that on social media. He's like, do you have the ovaries? Like, do you have the balls to put on social? I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, sure. Why not? So that was definitely not something that was like, you know, crafted for this purpose. So yeah, it's funny. I like that. I know that people think it's bullshit and they won't say it on there, but they'll say it in private conversations every single time. So yeah.
And I think sometimes if you do it with the right sense of humor and the right intelligence, you know what? Some people don't even get it. Some people think that you might actually be being serious, and that makes me laugh even more. And I enjoy that. Thank you so much for coming and having a chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
What's next for Rachel? What have you got in the pipeline for the rest of this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing some shows, which I'm very excited about. I'm working on collaborations. Really want to like focus more on that right now. I have 2 more singles I'll be releasing along with the full album. Like, I'm actually releasing an album, which, like, I guess I get a lot of mixed, you know, feedback on whether I should be releasing an album or not, but I am. So I'd
like you to release an album.
I appreciate that. I'm really excited about these next 2 singles. I think they're like the strongest of the songs that I've released. Obviously, I love Pasco, but I do think these next 2 songs are like really going to be special. And on the album, I mean, it was very hard to choose the singles because there's album tracks I love, and I'm going to be pushing those. So that I do think there's kind of something for everybody in a way, a lot of variety. And I really feel like I've sort of honed in my sound, and I'm very excited about collaborating and working with new people. Yeah, playing shows and like continuing promoting the album cycle, and you know, work on more opportunities like with sync and things like that.
I think it's important that you do an album. And the reason I think it's important that you do an album is because your music is involved enough from a listener point of view that, 3.5 minutes isn't enough, right? And there's a joy as a listener. There's a joy if it's the right artist. There's a joy in actually spending that hour with that artist and going through that journey, So do the album. Just saying. There you go. Listen,
I really appreciate that.
I should go get some sleep.
Yes.
You should go enjoy the rest of your day. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. Likewise, Graham. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here, and
we shall tag in, because that's the thing that you do. We shall tag in Fiona Apple, just in case she fancies collaborating.
Oh yeah.
You should go and check out Jonah's Policewoman, because I think you'd get on fabulously, and maybe there's a collaborator for you there. Cool.
I will.
And people, as you watch this, if you haven't checked out Rachel's music yet, please go and do that. It's very simple. You can go to her website, or you can go to any of those social things that we've been talking about, and you can follow her, and then you'll find out a little bit more, and you can actually listen to the music as well. And if you can spend some money, that's even better, because believe it or not, music doesn't get made for nothing. Well, there we go. If you've enjoyed this today, everybody, this has been my music. Please do share it with your friends, subscribe, and all of that malarkey. If you haven't enjoyed it, then tough. And this has actually been an instructional video on how to change a light bulb in the dark. Until next time, bye for now.
Thanks, Graham.